Hi and welcome. I'm Steve Martirano, and this is the Behavioral Corner. You're invited to hang with us as we discuss the ways we live today, the choices we make, the things we do, and how they affect our health and well-being. So you're on the corner, the Behavioral Corner. Please hang around a while. To the cloud. Okay, this is take 2 of the Behavioral Corner. Record date October 15th, 2021. 3, 2, 1. Hey everybody, how you doing? It's Steve Martirano again, hanging where else but on the Behavioral Corner. We're here and we're lucky because we're at the crossroads of everything. I'm telling you, folks stop by all the time with the wonderful information. We think it's wonderful and great stories to tell us about a range of topics. Look, when you talk about behavioral health, you're talking about everything. That's what I tell folks. They say, what's the podcast about? I say, well, it's about everything. From substance abuse and recovery and treatment through mental health issues as well. And so we've been doing it for a while now. We hope you're finding us because we're having fun and we think we're doing some good here. At least we hope we are. It's all underwritten by our great partners, Retreat Behavioral Health, about whom more later. Periodically throughout the course of the program, we have reached out to people who have been through some dark moments in their lives around the issue of substance abuse. They have successfully made it through that, and now their lives have turned around remarkably. I like to say all the time that stories of substance abuse and recovery are all the same, except they're different. And that's the case every single time. People make unbelievable returns to fuller and happier lives. Millions do. That's the sort of thing we don't talk much about for some strange reason. And that is, as big as the problem is, and as many people who need help, there are millions more who are living in long-term successful recovery. So it's possible. It's very, very possible. So when we reach out to these folks, we think their stories are worth hearing just because, well, if he did it or she did it, maybe I can do it. And that's why we call it Voices in Recovery. We welcome Gordy Hiltz to the program today. He is a member of the alumni group at Retreat Behavioral Health. We'll tell you about that a little bit later. But he was brought to our attention through that group, and he has a story he's going to share with us. It's a terrific story about his struggles with alcohol. Gordy, thanks for joining us on the corner.
Thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure. Let's begin by finding out who you are. Tell me about yourself. How old are you? Where were you born? What was your family like?
39 years old, born and raised in Shelton, Connecticut, with 2 parents still together. Dad's a retired cop. Mom is still working as an interior designer, and I have a little brother and sister. Well, younger brother and sister.
Ah, yes. You're getting to that point where they're not little anymore. So it sounds like, and again, I've heard this, it sounds like your typical front of the Wheaties box or the cereal box family, the all-American family. Dad's a cop. Mom's a working mom, and everything is just fine. And then, of course, as so often happens, substance abuse descends upon it. It's a family disease, so I know they were all affected one way or another. Your situation involved alcohol, correct?
Correct.
How did it begin for you? I'm sure it began the way it does for most people. You're a kid, you're drinking beer on the parking lot, and that's the beginning of it. Is that how it started for you?
For me, it was a little bit later. I was I guess straight edge was the old term. I'd never touched a drug or alcohol all the way through high school. I was actually a sophomore in college when I had my first drink. I finished drill instructor training at the Merchant Marine Academy to be a drill instructor for the next class coming in. And we had some drinks to celebrate finishing the training, and somebody gave me a shot, and that was my first drink. And then it was just it was a social thing in the beginning.
How old were you at that point?
19.
19 years old. Straight edge, of course, is the term used to describe young people. They don't hear it much anymore. I'm sure it wasn't a sort of formal group, but it identified a behavior where these kids were not only not messing with drugs or alcohol, they were opposed to the notion of anybody doing it, right? Straight edge.
Well,
so
I had a ton of friends doing it. It was just, I made sure that they knew I was adamantly against doing it myself.
Yeah. Did you choose that attitude because maybe dad's a cop and
My
something?
father actually was pretty good about it when I would go to like sleepovers and whatnot as a senior in high school for like prom or whatever. He'd just say, "Is there going to be alcohol?" And I'd say, "Yep." And he'd say, "Is there going to be drugs?" I said, "Probably marijuana." And he'd be like, "Okay, it's your choice. You know what to do." And
Right.
he said, "I'll pick you up tomorrow." And that was just a personal decision of mine at the time.
Yeah. Was he law enforcement in the town you grew up in?
No.
Oh, okay. So the likelihood that he was going to wind up arresting you and your friends was minimal. Well, that's good. I mean, so was there was there any history in the family? Did you come to find out about alcoholism?
Uh, Not that I know of officially. I mean, I could kind of take guesses now that I've been over a year
Yeah.
in the program. I could kind of be like, well, I see the signs in this person, but we don't. There's not a lot of people that talk about that type of stuff in my
No,
family.
there's not. There certainly isn't. But to your knowledge, there's never been anybody that was treated or
No,
yeah, yeah. So it comes out of the blue. It comes out of the blue, right?
right.
What I think what's mystifying to people who have not struggled with this thing is the randomness of it. How a guy like you, given that you delayed drinking till you're almost 20 years old, and bang, you're off to the races. Do you have any better understanding of why it happened to you than I might?
Not really. For me, I'm sure, like you said, there's all these stories are very similar, but they're also, unique in their own right. I mean, there's still people to this day that say, "Oh, it's right off the bat." Once you take that first drink, that's it. If you're an alcoholic from that second on. Other people will be like, "Well, it's developed over time." I don't have a judgment for that. I'm sure I've heard stories where it sounds like it affected certain people in that way, but it still affects people even in their recovery differently. From me to
Mm-hmm.
the next person to the next person. Uh, like I said in the beginning, it was kind of a social thing. I really only drank when a group would get together, go out, and that type of environment. It was never every day of the week, never before a night before class or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I spent 2 years out at sea because of my curriculum. It's all the ships are dry in America except for like one company. So we'd go months, without drinking and stuff like that. It was never, and there was never a burning desire. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it was just one of those, oh yeah, there's a bar here. Let's go. And then I went active duty after that. And again, pretty standard stuff, mostly social. After work on the weeknights, you'd start to have one or two drinks, maybe just to relax with the boys in the Marine Corps, in our unit. And but I mean, you're running every evening, every morning, you're doing your job every day. Maybe you'd get a little bit, more intoxicated on the weekends, and then every once in a while
Mm-hmm.
you'd have that real bad one. But excuse me, again, it wasn't, I mean, I did an Ironman towards the end of my enlistment tour. So I was working out easily 3 or 4 hours a day just in cardio, running 20 miles a day. So for me, I'd finish my 20 miles and I have like, my water, and then I'd have a cocktail maybe after my shower. But it wasn't something that really controlled what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then come back to regular, like you said, regular American Joe lifestyle, the front of the cereal box. I got hired. I got a job back home working for Sikorsky Aircraft. I worked my first shift, tried to climb the corporate ladder, finish my degree. So I took night classes and things like that. I was able to go through college while working a full-time job, extra hours, taking training there and what have you, and continue working out. But I was drinking again every night to relax. I'd come home and, I'd be making dinner and I'd have whatever the glass, a small glass of bourbon. Then it was two, and such forth. Over time, there's layoffs. I've been, life's not perfect. Everybody knows the economy ever since 2008 has been kind of like a roller coaster. And I've been through multiple jobs, never because of performance or anything like that. Drinking never controlled me on that aspect. We wouldn't party on work nights. And I lost a house. And then 2 years after I got out, a couple years after I got out, 2 or 3 years, I actually realized I did have a little bit of PTSD from my couple of combat tours. And
Where were the tours? Combat tours.
I spent 17 and a half months in Iraq.
Okay.
as a Huey door gunner, and a crew chief for anybody who knows the job in the Marine Corps. So there was a real dark period. I didn't want to admit it. It hit like a ton of bricks. It lasted for a few months. I definitely drank very, very heavily at the time. Not healthy at all, either mentally, emotionally, psychologically, or physically, however you want to look at it. I started to recognize I had an issue, not with the drinking, but with the PTSD. And then I started sharing that. And the more I talked about it, I became much, I guess you could say, more mentally sound, and continued with work life, everything else. Things were normal. Started taking my MBA program as time went on. And then for me, like you say, all of a sudden there's just this kind of moment. When the pandemic hit, we ended up working from home. Now I'm in the finance industry. And in the finance industry, there's kind of, there's some jokes and stuff. You got your bottle of really nice bourbon in the drawer or whatever for the Friday at 4:00 once the stock market closes and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now we're all on Zoom, and there's guys, partners all the way down through, whoever. And they're like, oh yeah, this pandemic thing stinks. Well, except for the fact that I can have a cocktail at lunch, and it's always been a joke, so now I'm 39, and this was only a year ago. So we're talking 19 years of drinking socially, getting slightly and slightly more heavy over time. I ended up getting anxiety and insomnia were two very normal things. Well, hit COVID. Now I'm alone. Isolation for someone who is an alcoholic is horrible. It's arguably one of the worst things for you, is to just be totally isolated, because then now you also start to slip into like a depression, and it's pretty severe. And next thing you know, I'm treating myself with drinks, and I'm drinking to sleep. And then when you start to drink to sleep, all of a sudden guys are joking about having cocktails at lunch. You're having cocktails at lunch. And the next thing you know, it happens so fast. It got to the point where I couldn't type my password in to log into my computer without having a sip of vodka.
To steady your hand?
To steady my hand. I didn't even know where it came. And we're talking a couple months. I know people who did it. Hey, stronger liver, stronger whatever, biology. They do it for years and years, and they say that they're good. We're talking we started working at home in April, and we're talking before the end of that summer, and next thing you know, my best friend from college, my family noticed, my wife and my parents, and my best friend from college walked through my door.
Well, let me stop you for a second. What did they notice? What were they notice besides
I imagine, so I imagine, the anxiety kept getting worse. My number one side effect to anxiety was vertigo, which is really awful, because all of a sudden, you're grabbing things. You'd be talking, you and I would have a conversation right now. I'd be holding onto the table for my dear life, just out of fear that all of a sudden I'd feel like I was going like this, even though nothing was happening.
Right.
And like I said, I would actually take sips of a drink to it would stop that feeling. I did see someone professionally. They prescribed me benzos for a little while. I really, really do not like the way that they made me feel. I'm still kind of anti a lot of drugs. I'm not straight edge, obviously. I've done more reading and research. I'm a little more open-minded when it comes to discussing the things. But when it comes to taking it, I don't really. I very rarely take Advil or Tylenol.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I was drinking. So they would notice, my dad would be talking to my dad, all of a sudden I'm holding on to a fence post, and so they noticed these things. And I didn't discuss my mental health issues at all. So none of them knew that I ever saw someone. None of them knew that I was on benzos. And when you're coming off the benzos, it's even worse. Because I didn't like the way they made me feel, I quit them cold turkey, not knowing that could be a problem.
Yep.
I had a hard time walking to the mailbox for a couple of weeks when I did quit them cold turkey. I didn't understand. I knew there would be probably some sort of withdrawal just off of theory. It wasn't until, however later, when I did actually check into retreat in New Haven, they were like, yeah, people with benzos they got to be weaned off. It's not healthy. You could have seizures and things.
Yeah.
I was like,
alcohol has to be handled very
very carefully too.
judiciously in terms of detox as well. So
Yeah.
the family notices it. You notice it for sure, even
I
though you've
noticed,
been.
yeah. I mean, the fact that I'm waking up and in order to log in, I'm having vodka in my orange juice, to
Right.
steady my hand. I'm like, wow. And but the thing is, when you're in it, you're just in it. You're like, something's wrong. You do things like you stop looking in the mirror. That's something I tell people, like as a recovery coach professional that I wanted to get into, I'm into now. But one of the things you look for, as long as a person has the desire to recover, that's the first step. But the thing is, when you're in it and you're in it deep, you don't think about that. And not only that, you start to do weird things. Like I'll ask people, do you avoid the mirror? Because the thing is, you physically change because of it. And a lot of people, they know that and they avoid seeing the physical change because then it's almost like a slap in the face. For me, one of the things that my family probably noticed, I was full jaundice.
Hmm.
My eyes were yellow. My skin was yellow.
So you were pounding pretty good.
I thought I was compared to
Yeah.
compared to some of the guys I was at retreat with, though. They said they were drinking more. I'm like, I don't know how you were. I would be here.
Right.
But yeah, I was definitely hitting it pretty hard.
It's again, these stories, as I said, are all different, and yours certainly is, because in the other cases I've talked to with people who have alcohol disorder problems, it was a more sort of a more obvious trajectory. It began sooner. There might have even been a history in the family. It ratcheted itself up. Blackout drinking would occur. Did you have blackout episodes?
I did, and I mean, it's only because I was told.
Yeah. People don't understand what that means. It doesn't mean you actually pass out. It just means that you do not recall the events that occurred while you were drinking heavily. So, but yours has an insidious sense to it, like this thing crept up on you, was obscured by a couple of other external factors, your military experience and the anxiety that was causing, and the financial crisis, so that it allowed the alcohol to sort of creep into your life, it seems anyway.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, until it became a full-blown problem. So that's the point at which I'm most fascinated. I guess they call it a moment of clarity or whatever. It's a moment when the person abusing drugs or alcohol suddenly says, well, this is no longer good. It's not working. I've got to get help. Tell me about that moment for you.
So it actually kind of came in two parts, very, very clearly two parts. So I was saying my best friend, my best man in my wedding, my best friend throughout life, and my college roommate, he all of a sudden, he lives in Florida, and my parents called him and said, hey, we got to step in and tell Gordy he needs some help. It's not right. And he drove through the night. He didn't even wait. He got in his car, put work aside, he owns his own company, energy company. He moved his appointments, and he drove straight through the night to my house. He walked through the door before anybody, because my family and I have never, I've always been kind of the black sheep. So, and they can say things that really are just inappropriate and kind of condescending to people. It's just kind of how they are. And your family knows how to push your buttons, even though they may have good, you could call it good intentions, bad judgment.
Yep.
And he knows that part of them. And so he told me later on, he's like, I showed up to make sure that at least you had somebody who was a positive support system for you.
Yeah. He was ready for you. And
yeah, exactly. He's like, I didn't want you to face that and just get absolutely ripped to pieces and not have, anybody to hold on to.
Yeah.
And,
their attitude was what, hostile or angry, or
no, I want to say it was almost like something just needs to be done. It was very neutral. He walked through the door, and the moment of clarity is as soon as he walked through the door, that's when I realized I was depressed. He hugged me, and I just started crying.
Yeah.
And I don't usually cry for things in general. And I just started crying so hard. And all of a sudden it was like giving up. It was like finally throwing in the towel and saying, I'm done fighting.
Yeah, that
Um,
surrender moment is also a common occurrence for people where they just know that this is beyond me to figure this out. So anyway, you got yourself. So you've been sober now over a year, is that right?
14 months and 2 weeks, I think.
Congratulations, that's great. And you went to retreat for your treatment. Um, do you now identify as an alcoholic?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's very hard for some people. They resist the notion that for the rest of their lives they will have to accept the fact that they're this, and I'm an alcoholic. You don't have a problem with that?
I one of the funny thing is alcoholics tend to lie, especially when they're deep in it. Part of the other thing is you're supposed to learn humility from your disease, and that was one of the things I really needed to learn the most. I was always like, I can do this. I still perform well. Nothing, even though I'm full jaundice, my mind was still sharp, and but my body was breaking down, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm fine. I don't even feel a hangover, stuff like that. Well, if I was really in trouble, I'd feel a hangover. You make these excuses, and I'm like, I can handle this. I can handle this. And it was that cockiness where people would be like, oh, do you have a problem? And I'd say, I'd look you straight in the face and say, no, it's my solution. Or I tell you, you're my problem right now, and this is going to be my solution, or whatever. And I was brutally honest. I never hid from it. And hiding from things, I hid from my PTSD, and I hid from that problem for years, and it ate me alive inside. And it's not healthy. It's just not healthy to hide from things. And I think one of the biggest problems, especially for alcoholics, addicts, even I think it's less so today for people with anxiety and depression, but they had it as well. This is just an opinion, is there's a stigma. There's a stigma around it. If a person overcame cancer, right? And they applied for a job and they were a cancer survivor, do you think the people hiring them would be like, oh, you're a cancer survivor, and have a bad stigma on there? A lot of people don't like to see alcoholism or addiction as a disease, when medically it's been proven it is a disease. There's actually a different way the brain operates when it comes to certain things. And well, I'm an alcoholic, but I haven't had a drink in 14 and a half months. I know it's a problem, but it's a problem that I'm working to overcome. And yes. I do things on a regular basis to make sure you're not cured. That would be great. If you could take a pill or a needle and you just never, whatever that issue in your brain is gone. Hey, yeah, great. That would be awesome, but it doesn't exist. And so I need to just live who I am, accept who I am, accept my problem, and overcome it on a daily basis. And that's fine.
Do you experience any cravings? You ever think about, gee, it'd be great to have a drink?
For me, I'm very lucky. I've heard stories of people that actually change routes driving home. That's how, again, I think the severity of the disease is different for different people. It's strange to say I'm lucky in the fact that I can drive past liquor stores and it doesn't bother me, but it's true. I know people who literally cannot drive past the liquor store, or they can't take a bus route that has one on the route. And, I don't have that, thank God. But like the other day, just a couple days ago, I happened to be driving past a microbrewery that makes good barbecue food. And it was just a nice fall evening. And I was like, man, it would be really nice to have a beer. Like not chug beers, not this. It would just be nice to taste a beer. I can't do that. If I do that, it's literally a cliff. That's one of the things you have to admit. One drink, there's no such thing as one drink.
Yeah, you're interesting in that regard, because as you know, there are many groups now who are working along the lines of well, they call it California Sobriety. I don't know if you've heard about this. It's the notion that someone with an alcohol problem who addresses it with treatment can be brought back to a social drinker, someone who no longer is in the grip of the alcohol or abusing it, but can have a drink or wine with dinner. That's not for you, correct?
Not a chance. Definitely not now. I mean, So the reason I said 2 steps for the clarity moment, the first one was that surrender, like I told that we just talked about, like
Right.
hugging my best friend, like emotionally, mentally, psychologically, physically. I fell into his arms and just cried, and I knew that was it. Um, the second moment, so I left retreat. I actually went to retreat twice in the same summer. I left retreat. Now, mind you, up until this crash over those several months, I didn't recognize any sort of issue at all. And here I'm at retreat. I went through a detox. Then they're like, oh, by the way, you're staying here for rehab. I fought it tooth and nail. Like, there's nothing wrong with me. I just went too far. I just need to put myself in check, all this other stuff. By the time I left retreat that time, I admitted I had a problem. I admitted I was an alcoholic. I didn't drink for the 28 days I was there. I didn't drink for the whole month after I left. Then I got laid off again. The company, everybody was pulling their money out of the market, and the company ended up downsizing by 20% because we were just bleeding money off of investments. And they were great. They were like, look, every one of us partners, everything else, we'll write you letters of recommendation. We'll hook you up with job interviews, everything else. And I'm sitting, they were so good that I was like, I thought I was okay. And I was, because of how positive they were and the way they handled it. And then I had a bachelor party the same weekend. And I'm going, all right, well, you know what? I haven't had a drink in 2 months. I feel pretty good. I have it under control, like you said, this California, whatever. I'm just gonna have a couple drinks at the bachelor party because, hey, I got laid off. We're going golfing. I'll do it during the day while I golf. Not a big deal. I won't go out that night. Yeah, you know what I ended up doing? 3 straight days of drinking, and then mentally, I was like trying to jump right back in the pool where I got out. 60 days clean. I know you're not fully purged or detoxed, so to speak, but you're pretty far along. Like, as far as like the biology is concerned,
Absolutely.
your tolerance is not, especially for something like, for me, it was vodka. I 3 martinis and I was destroyed back when I was, drinking very, very heavily. 3 martinis would have given me just a nice buzz. But here I am that weekend going, oh, yeah, I got this. No, absolutely not. But did it stop me? No. All of a sudden, here I am with hiding a bottle in my trunk because I just didn't want to hear it.
Gordy, I had someone on a while back who told a similar story of relapsing at his bachelor party, which unfortunately was in Atlantic City, I think. And he managed to not only relapse, but spend the entire wedding money. He lost it all at the casino. So, I mean, that's a bad place to be.
So I got lucky. My father, this is how stupid you get. I called my wife. He's 2.5 now, my son. And I called her at like 11 o'clock, knowing she's the only one home with him, and he's sleeping, obviously. And its liquor stores are closed because it's Connecticut. It's Sunday. So I went to a local pub. I couldn't drive. So I was like, hey, can you come get me? She's like, no, I have her son in bed and I'm not waking him up to come get you. So she called my dad. All of a sudden I turn around, my dad's right next to me. And he lives like a solid 35 minutes away. And I'm like, oh shit. Excuse me. And he goes, let's go. And I'm like, all right, we get in the car. He goes, so I'm taking you right back to retreat, right? And I'm like, I just want to go. I fought him for the car ride. I got back in there. I ended up waking up because I only drank 3 days only, but still, it was, like I said, that's where the one drink doesn't exist. It was supposed to be the one drink for golf, or the couple of drinks during golf. It ended up turning into 3 days of nonstop drinking.
Yeah.
And so it's a cliff. And I was real mad at myself. There's something saying, put down the bat and pick up the feather duster, because sometimes you can beat yourself up worse than anybody can do anything for you or say to you. And all I'm thinking about is my kid, because for that whole month I was home from retreat, I spent every moment with him. He got used to me being the one putting him to bed, rocking him to sleep and everything else. And that connection with my son, because when I was working, I got to see him 15 minutes a day, because you're trying to climb that ladder. I'm commuting 2 hours to New York City each way, and I'm working 10 hours a day. I'm not seeing my kid, and but then when I got to spend some serious time with them, and I've always wanted to be a father my whole life, It just, I'm like, what were you thinking? Are you
Mhm.
serious?
Mhm.
And that was the second moment of clarity where I was like, he's literally my angel from God. Um,
Mhm.
and that time in retreat, when I went through the counseling, apparently I did it in such a different manner where that's where I went from, yeah, I'm an alcoholic, but back in the back of my head, I'm an alcoholic who could have a couple drinks, to not a chance. I know that
Yeah.
this, like, I'm going to ruin my life, you know, and, uh, and they ended up having me work with people coming out of detox while I was there, to help them not be so on edge like I was my first time. They were letting me co-teach some of the classes,
Mhm.
because I took a huge inch. I asked my counselor for homework every night. I wasn't one of those that would just go hang out in the lounge or hang out in the cafeteria. I don't smoke, so I spent all my time reading and asking for homework, and I was reading how to treat anxiety and depression without prescriptions or without any medication. I'm reading the big book. I'm reading books on alcoholism and different types of mental issues that people go through. I was just like, give me more. I was doing self-assessments that I was assigned, and they saw that, and which was cool. And they nurtured it. And then
Mhm.
they were the ones who recommended when I got out, because one of the things of treating anxiety and depression without medication in the top five, well, there's only seven, but in the top five is life's purpose, have a purpose in life, and have a purpose in what you do for a job or a career.
Resulted in you making a radical change
Very
in
radical.
career wise. You have recently, as you told me earlier, been certified as a recovery coach, a
Yes.
professional recovery coach.
So one Joy from Retreat Behavior,
Mhm.
her and I hit it off very, very well. Right from the beginning. I was the first person she let chair the meeting, the Thursday night AA alumni meetings. And I started to tell her that I was very interested in service and giving back and helping others and things like that, and having more of a purpose in my life as opposed to chasing the dollar. My whole life was about success, was defined by how much money you made. And I was like, it's just not true anymore. I'm happy. This past year with my son has been, I can't even put into words. It beats every dollar I ever made. Um, and she says, well, there's a program called CCAR. Why don't you look into it and start with becoming a recovery coach? So I did, signed up, and I never looked back. And I just
Mhm.
took class after class after class every month, from every a few weeks a month for June, July, August, September. And I sat on the board at the end of the first week of October, and I just got certified as a recovery coach professional
Well,
for,
congratulations.
for addiction.
What's amazing about these stories about substance abuse. Uh, the people who manage to get out the other side and turn their lives around. Not all of them, some of them take the path you have chosen, but all of them have the same story of a richer, fuller life, a life that is so infinitely better than when they were abusing substances that they can't even imagine ever going back. Where do you see the future for you with regard to helping others?
Um, so one of the big things I've learned is, and one of the reasons I relapsed after that month, I should have, when I got laid off, I didn't talk to anybody about it. And I just went and thought I could handle it. I had plenty of people who are alumni from retreat and that I could have called for support. And they talk about your support network as one of your major tools when you're in recovery. I ignored that, and I don't do that anymore. And in fact, I host Saturday night dinner and board games and just hangouts at my house for alumni and anybody from the local AA. And that's going to continue. I'm going to start doing recovery. I just got certified. I'm looking at the local sobriety centers, different retreat areas around the Danbury area, because that's the area of Connecticut I live in, and hopefully getting involved there. So it's a full-time job, helping people who, regardless of what step they are in the process of recovery, either the beginning where they're still using, but they know that they need help, all the way through, being back in the community and serving, but providing service to others themselves. And along the way, because just like I said, my mind is always relatively sharp, and I've always been hungry for knowledge. I love reading and taking courses and being challenged. I'm going to continue taking classes every chance I get, and who knows? Maybe become I can't predict the future. Maybe a counselor one day. I don't know if that's the route I'll take, but I hope to go down the path and just learn more and more and more about the disease and how it affects not only alcoholics, but people with drug addictions. And then, like you said, the behavior, on the behavioral corner, you come into all types, even mental illness is something I'd like to add in there, because a lot of times they're coupled.
Yes, they are.
They're very, very coupled. And then because I am a veteran and I hid from some of the things that I was dealing with, I would also like to at least have, I don't want to say I'm going to focus only on veterans, but I would definitely like to specialize, have some sort of specialization and time that goes back into the veteran community and people who are struggling in the veteran community.
Well, Gordy, good luck with all that. I mean, your story is an inspiration. And again, we're reminded that, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You got to go looking for it. Congratulations on the sobriety and the certification as a coach. And we, wish you nothing but smooth sailing ahead, pal. Thanks for hanging with us.
Yeah, thank you again for having me. It was really great talking to you.
It's a pleasure. Gordy Hiltz. Hey guys, again, thanks. Look for us, Facebook, Spotify, all those places where they are. And let us know what you think. We're open to any suggestions here on the corner. Take care. See you next time.
Retreat Behavioral Health has proudly been serving the community for over 10 years. Here at Retreat, we believe in the power of connection and quality care. We offer comprehensive, holistic, and compassionate treatment from industry-leading experts. Call 855-802-6600 or visit us at www.retreatbehavioralhealth.com to begin your journey today.